Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. My name is Christina. This is a reading for Twin Flame Divine Feminines. Or if you don't resonate with that label, perhaps you're the masculine watching this, or if you're not a twin flame at all, you just want to learn more about how to balance the feminine energies within yourself, then this reading is for you. The main focus of your reading today are 3 questions. What is your current energy? What should you be focusing on? And where is an area of growth? So Divine Feminine, I'm going to get started with the bottom of the deck energy. It's really interesting today because there's a lot of forward movement and a lot of change coming in for you. But we're starting off here with the fear and the flow energy, which is so interesting because to me it was talking about I feel like there may be a little bit of perhaps anxiety or worry about the direction that you're going in, or if there is change, it's almost like having to surrender to the flow state or surrender to the flow or the current of where it is the energy is moving towards. But I feel like absolutely it's a really positive direction for you. We have also here the Knight of Materials and the Queen of Voices, right? It's like the Knight of Materials talks about forward movement, right? Very steady progress. Because it's materials, I feel like it has to do with sort of your physical environment or physical change that's happening or coming in for you even. But with this Queen of Voices, right? It's perhaps a bit on the defensive with this fear energy, or feeling like there's a lot of movement or thoughts that perhaps are intrusive almost. It's kind of feeling like intrusive thoughts or just worry, concern about what it is that's coming in. But this is absolutely sort of a positive change. It's just, I feel like there's just a lot of movement or just a lot of things being cleared for you as well that may be causing a little bit of this sort of anxiety or worry. But we have here for this the Modern Nirvana deck, which I love so much. It's probably one of my favorite decks right now at the moment. The Emotions card and the Kintsugi. So the Emotions card I've been talking about as being sort of a really fabulous display that sort of draws you in. And of course it has to do with emotions as well, but it feels like there's something here. It could be an idea that you've been having, or just getting pulled into something that was almost like a distraction, it could be, and spending perhaps too much time in it, just because it's a gorgeous sort of energy. But I feel like you are moving out of this, because we do have sort of the Ace of Emotions coming out, and these 2 cards came out in a previous reading from this week. It wasn't a twin flame reading. If I remember, I'll try and post it because it may be relevant to you, but or I'll link it above here. But we'll get to that. This energy is going to come back throughout the reading. And the Kintsugi card, which I love so much. This Kintsugi is the Japanese art form and philosophy where broken pottery is repaired by using sort of gold inlay. So the final product, once sort of this broken pottery is repaired, is more beautiful because of the brokenness. And so I feel like this is sort of the overall energy here of I feel like you've done significant sort of healing work. And it's coming full circle is basically what it is. I feel like that's what's bringing in sort of this new change. And there may be sort of this feeling of anxiety or fear just because whatever's coming in, it feels like it's going to directly sort of not trigger, because I don't feel like it may be a trigger. It may be a past trigger that you've healed. But whatever's coming in feels like it will directly sort of irritate or touch on the sort of broken gold pieces, if that makes sense, right? The aspects that you've healed, there's a sort of an energy coming in that may sort of irritate or activate those kind of fault lines, basically, is how this is feeling. But I feel like for you, what your current energy is really gorgeous. This movement card, which I love today because I was really drawn to like the 4 wands, right? So it kind of feels like a 4 of wands moving towards union kind of energy. That's your focus, or that's your current energy, which I love so much. And then here you had these 3 cards come out together. So the Lovers in the middle, right, which is representing the connection. On one side, you have the 6 of Voices, and on the other side, you have the 4 of Voices, which I love, because I feel like for you, you're actually, I mean, switch this around, because I'm using the Muse deck. It's not like exactly clear on which one is you, but I feel like you're on this side. But if it's not resonating, you may be the 6 of Voices energy. But this is talking to me because it's with the 4 wands, right? The 4 sort of lights coming out of the eyes here. I feel like this is you sort of either like daydreaming or being in this really calm sort of meditative state, perhaps, of just imagining what the connection will look like, or just being sort of receptive to the ideas that you're receiving, any sort of insights or whatever this is. This to me sort of feels like envisioning, or even like astral traveling as well, if that's something that you do or part of your practice. It could be something like that, just because it's like the sleep and all of this sort of starry energy. There was something else here, but now I can't remember what it was. Well, I feel like it's oh, that's interesting. I'm noticing this door here for the first time, which is interesting. But I feel like this for you is an absolutely positive and beneficial energy to be in, because there's no resistance here, right? It's like it's very much just sort of welcoming in anything that's coming to you sort of intuitively, or just like through energy, right? It's like not necessarily what your physical environment looks like or anything like that. With the 6 of Voices here as well, coming on sort of this side, it's sort of like your counterpart is actively or being assisted in sort of moving towards this energy. I feel like they are also focused on the Lover's energy of like moving towards the partnership, that kind of thing. I love this 6 of Voices. It's been coming out a lot actually this week, of being sort of like moving very swiftly and effortlessly over any sort of obstacle that sort of presented, right? And being assisted in that process as well. That could also be your energy as well. There could be sort of like these are the 2 sort of states you're in, like in sort of your sleep state's very peaceful, and then in sort of your waking daily life, it's like everything moves smoothly, things are easy. There's no like major problems or obstacles that are sort of holding you up, right? That could also be for you as well. And it feels like you are moving towards union, or this partnership, or this lover's energy, whatever that is. Okay, and here you have the Perception and Discernment card, which I love so much. It's such an interesting, first of all, combination of cards with like sort of this eye here of like the stream coming down, and then it sort of being blown up or like expanded in this card. So this Perception card I'll talk about first. It came out in a recent reading as being like what it is that you're focused on is sort of what it is that you will notice, if that makes sense. It came through with this really like complicated message, which I'm not going to go in full detail, but if you're familiar with like the selective attention test in psychology, where you're given a task to focus on, and sort of all the other things in the environment just sort of become like you don't notice them, you don't register them consciously. It's like there could be a really big sort of distraction or change that passes through, but because it's not part of the task that you're focused on, it just sort of fades into the background. That's what this is talking about, which is kind of like this energy here. It's like this energy, whatever this is not part of, well, it is sort of, it's like it's in your environment, but the energy of it doesn't sort of go into your consciousness because it's not part of the task that you're focused on. And so for for how I'm reading this, it's like you're so focused on sort of this task of with the spotlights, right? It's like that's what it was. It was the headlight energy. You're focused on what's on the road ahead, on what it is that you're supposed to be focusing on. And so anything else that's not that just sort of fades into the background. And I feel like that's a very actually positive energy for you to be in. Because I do feel that it's allowing you to sort of move through or over even obstacles. Like it's like you're focused on perhaps ease or peace or being in this sort of like meditative state that everything just sort of feels like that energy, if that makes sense. Okay, next question is, what should you be focused on? Or what's an area that you can focus on instead or in addition to that? And you have the cleanse card, which I love so much. But also these two cards, which surprisingly have come up together in a couple of different readings, ideation and frustration, which I love because I whenever these two cards come out together, which is more often than you'd think, I see this as being sort of the blueprint, right? Like your ideas or the plan that you have for whatever aspect in your life that you're planning for, which is probably every aspect. But this frustration card comes in as being like actually building or having those manifestations arrive in your physical life. And of course, there's always this sort of like translation process where the thing that arrives in your physical life is not a direct match to what it is that you imagined, right? It's just because of the nature of this reality is that there's never going to be an exact copy of what it is that you want, of course, because this is more of like a 2D, just like planning, thoughts, ideas kind of thing. And this is the actual sort of 3D where there's dimension to it. And so there's a little bit more sort of struggle or frustration in sort of getting this manifestation to match what it is that you envisioned or planned. And with this cleanse card, I feel like that's sort of what is being talked about here in this thing. I feel like there's an energy here of almost like needing to clean or clear up some of your plans or expectations because there's not a match here, and that could be causing some frustration. Even though I was just saying that it kind of feels like you're moving through obstacles really quickly. But you may not be feeling that. Like the energy is that there is movement forward. But there may still be frustration with the process, perhaps. Because you have here the Ace of Emotions, which to me talks about like coming up from air, from like a very sort of heavy experience. With the cleanse card, these are absolutely sort of linked. And with the emotions card, I'm going to bring this one in too. Look at all this gorgeous energy. So there may have been something that and with the emotions, it could be like your plans or ideas, right? It's like if you were in this sort of like daydreamy space, you may have been like envisioning what this connection is going to look like or what the union is going to look like or whatever, just having ideas, daydreams. And that's what sort of drew you in, right? Sort of like envisioning perhaps the best case scenario kind of thing. But then having to come out of that state, if that makes sense, right? It's like this display or daydreaming state kind of pulled you in perhaps for a time, and now having to sort of emerge from that state, because as beneficial as daydreaming sort of is for manifestation, the actual manifestation rarely ever matches exactly what it is that you envisioned. I feel like that's what this whole section is talking about, because you have here the Chariot and the Seven of Emotions, right? So the Chariot talks about sort of like putting your plans into action, right? It's like the actual building of it, or like actually like doing the things that you want to do. very strongly, I want to say, because you have this like little star in her third eye there with the star here. It's just like, this is the same energy. This is you wanting to put your plans into action. The 7 of emotions coming out next. It's almost like, because I love how these two like lights sort of mirror each other, but they're going in different directions, right? It's like that's what's kind of the issue. It's like you have this goal or vision or focus that you're headed towards, and then what actually comes in is sort of like not it. It's like you were hoping for horses, but what you're getting is goldfish instead. That kind of like mismatch, I want to say. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's almost like having to reevaluate your plans or reevaluate what it is that you can actually work with in this state right now, right? It's like, it's kind of like wanting to move forward too quickly or something like that, or it's like the flow state, because this absolutely is part of the process or part of the flow, part of like where it is that you're going. It is movement forward, but perhaps it's not as fast as you would like, or not as like energetic, or whatever it is, right? It's like goldfish compared to horses, that kind of thing. And then here you have the 10 of voices, which it's not like the traditional meaning of the 10 of voices. It's more so like the energy or the manifestations that are coming in are sort of putting you in this like, whatever this like energy is, it's sort of putting you almost at like a standstill, right? It's like you're wanting to move forward, but it's putting you, it's almost like locking you in place. Or there could be that sensation because it's fear. It's like, it could be the fear of like what it is that you're imagining or envisioning is not a match to what it is that's arriving. And so there could be fear of like, what if I'm doing this wrong? What if this is not it? Like it's all this what if that's sort of keeping you not stagnant, but locked in place, right? It's like it's the opposite of movement forward for you. It's like this. Anyways, this is what you should be focusing on. So what's coming in next is this energy, this 2 of voices, because what the message was for this section was actually that your plans here, whatever it is that you're envisioning, is actually sort of holding you back in some way, because it's causing this sort of 2 of swords, which is indecision, right? It's like you made a choice, perhaps like a conscious decision to focus on union or a specific choice in whatever, and sort of imagining what that would look like, right? Because that's sort of an essential process or part of the manifestational process. But for some reason, there's sort of a hold up here. And I want to say it's because the 3 of materials, which talks about collaboration. And just an interesting thing here about the hair, right? It's like the hair here in this picture is tangled, whereas like in this picture, the hair is like harmoniously woven. And so there's a mismatch here. And I want to say that for this energy here, it's like what it is that you were envisioning perhaps was only your side of the story, if that makes sense. It's like it's what would be the best case scenario for you is kind of what this is talking about. But in reality, if you're talking about unity and oneness and all that, you have to also take into account the other person's sort of expectations and story and ability to their plans, basically. And so there may be a frustration there because what's coming in, which is absolutely this sort of like union lovers energy, is not what you expected, because you perhaps didn't consider the other aspect, if that makes sense. Because what you have here is is this. This is, so the one card, which I'm just calling unity or oneness. This is the union of you and your counterpart. That's the goal. That's what you're working towards. That's what you're focused on. And then you have these two cards, the awareness and the strength. So this strength card I've been describing as being like a set of rules or expectations that you may have about a certain condition or something like that. It's like you're in a certain circumstance. These are sort of the rules, expectations that I would expect to have in that case. But with it coming out of the awareness, it's kind of like this is your idea, your best case scenario kind of thing. But what's coming in is like something totally unexpected that doesn't at all match this idealized form of what it is that you are trying to bring in. And I feel like for this, it's talking about having to almost just like scrap all of that, right? It's like you did a lot of ideation, all of this sort of like planning, visualizing kind of thing. But what wants to come in is this greatness card, which I want to put together with this, right? It's like the weaving of the hair, or like this sort of like harmonious kind of thing together. Because I feel like what you were imagining, DF, as beautiful and as lovely as it was somehow leaving out your counterparts' expectations, because they also have expectations or ideas or plans or dreams or whatever of what this union or coming together is going to look like. And if you're sort of just open to that, if you sort of let go of whatever it is that sort of whole, like this sort of things aren't working out kind of thing, try and embrace the idea that it is working out. It's just what it is that's coming in is going to be much greater, much better, much more expansive than anything that you could have imagined on your own, is basically what this is talking about. It's like you have to take into account that the fact that you are sort of, this is a collaborative process. It is something that you're supposed to be doing together. And if you're just sort of taking the reins and trying to do it on your own, it's not going to work out in the way that you expect, because you're needing to sort of take it. It needs to be a collaborative process, basically. Okay. Last section is, where's an area of growth? You have here the trust and the peace card, which I feel like is such a big thing. Like, trust is super important. This card specifically talks to me about the fact that in all sort of like partnerships or relationships, especially if they're like more spiritual or twin flame partnerships, there is this third energy that's created between the two of you. There's like your counterpart as individuals, and then together there's a third energy that's created between you that almost has its own sort of expectations and energy and all that. And it's putting your trust in that, because that third energy, because it's not like a living person with like ambition and dreams and all that, it has no resistance in that sense. And so the manifestational process can work a lot faster if you just sort of surrender to that, the third energy. And that's sort of where the peace comes in. It's kind of like, I feel like you were trying to manifest too much on your own. Whereas if you sort of surrender to the third energy, it can kind of help to move the process along. But you have to surrender, like you have to, I don't want to keep using the word surrender because that feels too, I don't know, that feels too like disempowering. But the Muse of materials, this is absolutely the sort of thing, the next challenge, because I see these Muse cards as being like a challenge that you are sort of being asked to go through, is because it's coming through with materials. It's sort of the physical realm kind of manifestational process. It's like, this is the last step of moving towards what it is that you want. And it's having to trust that even if the sort of things that are coming up for you are not things that you expected or things that you manifested, trust that it is part of the process, because it could be something that your partner is manifesting and you're just not aware of it yet, or you're not sure where it is that it's going. It could be something that's part of this like collaboration process, but you're not seeing how it's weaving together yet, I want to say, but I do think it will become clear. And then you have here the eight of inspiration and the 9 of inspiration, which I love so much, because this card to me, it's absolutely movement forward, right? 8 of inspiration talks about sort of like, it's all of this movement, because sometimes I see this as being like the 8 of wands, but also the 4 of wands, where all the intention and energy is absolutely arriving quickly. But with this card, it looks to me kind of like a sports car with drag, right? It's like, despite how fast a sports car moves, there's always drag. There's always sort of resistance, but that is an absolutely necessary part of forward momentum. Like, without resistance, you would never be able to move forward, because that's sort of the force that pushes you, right? It's like, if you're on ice where there's no resistance and you try and propel yourself forward without any sort of friction, you're just gonna, like, your legs are just gonna move in place. They're not gonna move forward. And so that's what this energy is talking about, is sort of to embrace the resistance, basically. With this 9 of inspiration, so I really like this card. It's very powerful and strong. However, for you, I feel like this being an area of growth, because it's followed by the death card and transitioning into the ace of inspiration, right? So it's like going from the 9, which is incredibly like strong and powerful and independent. However, with the 9 of wands, it sort of comes in with that energy of like the wounded warrior, where it's like you've gone through so many battles that, or you've gone through so much resistance, let's just call it, that it almost puts you on guard, or like not wanting to embrace sort of a new start. And I feel like that's what's wanting to shift within you, with this death card coming through, is sort of evaluating perhaps, or just like almost like letting down this guard, right? It's like, because there could be a lot of changes coming in, and you may be experiencing resistance to that, because it's like, this is not the change that I envision, or this is not the change that I wanted or am trying to bring into my life. But it's like, it's a change that may be necessary for union that you are not aware of, but that the third energy of your partnership is absolutely aware of and is trying to manifest for you. With this ace of inspiration, it's still all of this sort of like creative, confidence sort of energy, being the sort of the wands, the inspiration, but the ace is more of like a fresh start or a fresh perspective. Perhaps it's more open, especially because it's coming after the death card, which is talking about like a rebirth, right? So I feel like there's some aspect here for that as well. And the death card actually came up next to the justice card, which I love so much, because look at these two energies together. And also the transcendence card. This is the first time I'm seeing this card, but it absolutely fits in energetically with all of these cards today. So this is talking to me about, because this justice card I often talk about as like having made a choice. Once you sort of start walking down that path, all of this sort of information opens up for you. Like, you have access to a whole bunch of new options and choices and downloads and all that. But sometimes, because that choice is so monumental or so life-changing, perhaps, the information that comes in is not always immediately clear as to why it is that thing is happening, right? It's like kind of like you can't see the full picture yet. You absolutely have all the information somewhere, But it's kind of like it unfolds over time. And that's what this death energy is talking about. Because I absolutely feel like there's this sort of like cleansing energy that's happening for you, where it's clearing out any sort of past expectations that you may have about relationships in general, or union, or whatever it is, any sort of expectations that you may have about this partnership. But what is coming in for you is much, much greater and magical and beautiful than you could have imagined on your own, basically. Okay. That's also what this Transcendence card, it was looking like this Two of Voices, because I was looking at her hair, right? It's like this one was tangled. This Two of Voices, this indecision was sort of tangled, and it's just sort of like cutting yourself off from that indecision, because it's like you are moving forward, you are focused on the union, the Lover's energy, and it's kind of just like detangling any sort of knots that you may have about whether or not it's going to match your expectations, but it's absolutely going to exceed your expectations in sort of very unexpected way, is kind of how this is coming through. And then the last two cards, which I've already sort of talked about, is the Direction and the Friction card. So this Direction card, right? It's like you are moving forward. There is a path. However, it's like this looked like sort of like a ship that was moving through ice, right? And it's kind of like, because there's no clear path yet, it's kind of, the ship is having to break through the ice at the same time, kind of thing. So I feel like there's this whole energy of one step at a time, that the next path or step will be revealed once you get there. But if you had sort of the full picture now, it would almost be like too big of a adventure, or too big of a concept, or a leap, perhaps. It might be too big of a leap in order for you to get there. It's like it's kind of just like one step at a time. You are moving in the right direction. It's just kind of surrendering to that process. And then with the Friction, as I was talking about, because she's holding a heart here, it's absolutely just emphasizing that friction is necessary in order to move forward, right? It's like you have to have sort of the friction between like your foot and the ground in order for you to actually take a step. If not, you would just slip and fall, right? So that's what this is talking about. If you are experiencing sort of resistance, just remembering that it is necessary for forward momentum, which is actually absolutely what it is that's your current energy. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not doing extendeds for these twin flame readings, because I think that the counterpart energy is sort of like the extended for these. So if you're interested, the Divine Masculine reading is posted, so you can go watch that immediately. I do have other videos if you're interested in watching those. You can check those out. Thanks so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.